Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining our conversation today. Alana and I are happy to have you with us. Not a super long episode, as we've had a few conversations on our podcast the last few weeks, maybe last month, where we have talked about things that are a little more controversial, a little bit heavier,
Emotionally charged.
emotionally charged. And we both wanted to hold space for those of you that might have felt that emotionally charged response to some of these harder conversations. And as we do feel like it's important to have these hard conversations and lean into the hard part of healing, we have to lean into the hard parts and dig in a little bit deeper. I remember going through my brain spotting training and my supervisor saying, trauma needs to rear its ugly head. You've got to let it come up and out. And that goes through my mind all the time, especially when I'm brain spotting people. It's not pretty. It is ugly at times. And there's so many parts of us that when we start touching those pieces, parts are going to respond different ways. They might run, they might shove, they might get angry, they might resist in so many different ways. And I think we just want to hold space and talk a little bit about those different parts that might be activated with some of these hard conversations and topics and normalize it, I guess, too, right?
Mhm,
Just like, yeah,
mhm.
of course, you're going to feel very, maybe even defensive when you hear us talk about some of these things. So, as always, if this is coming up for you, please reach out to your professional and help process through that because it's bringing something up. Well, you want to look at that. And we're going to talk about that today.
I love how you started that because triggers are information for us where there is some healing to be done. And so when we can look at that of like, oh, yeah, there's something there. I'm going to be honest, like when I have had a trigger or get triggered, that's not where my brain goes of like, oh, cool, I'm going to learn. Right. My brain's like, shit, like, I'm going to fail this. That's what really comes up.
Right.
But as we've done these hard episodes or these different topics, I've thought about how when I was running groups, I would have Luke Gordon come in and talk and let women have like a Q&A where they would just ask questions on getting in the mind of an addict. And I would always preface him coming in and I would say, hey, I'd first say you didn't, the week he's here, you don't have to come. If that does not feel right to you, check in with you. And with him being here, like at any point, if it becomes a lot or you get triggered, like you take care of you. But I said, I think back to my own healing journey, and depending on where I was, any given day, or maybe even any given moment, would be all the difference on whether I wanted to strangle the guy and like degut him, or whether I was like, oh my gosh, that's wonderful. That's powerful. And it had so much to do with my own healing journey and what they said. I'm not going to put it like when somebody says something that's bullcrap, I'm going to respond to that. But
Yeah.
also, I can have somebody say something that is really neutral, that so much of my experience framed how I took that. And so I would just give permission to the women of whatever you comes up for you, whatever happens is totally okay. And so, as even we did our interview a few weeks ago, where we were talking about our narcissist cheaters, there was a few things in that that I heard that I went, yeah, that is the neutral truth of looking at narcissism through the lens of a personality disorder. And depending on where I was at, I might have taken that and went, oh my gosh, that is really helpful. I just needed to know that so I can have more empathy for my partner. Or it was, oh, hell no, burn the house down because this is the worst thing I've ever heard. And
Yeah.
so, whatever response you may have had, we just want to start with the foundation of it is normal and okay.
Absolutely. Well, and bringing up that conversation, I think I told you this after we recorded, but I even felt myself having a response in that conversation with on
Oh, yeah.
different times.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you listeners would even pick that up. Maybe if you go back and listen, like you probably picked up on me going, okay, well, hold on a second. If I'm putting myself in a betrayed partner's situation or story or right, because my body was responding again very naturally and normally. So I like that you're normalizing what we're experiencing when you go through betrayal trauma. Because in general, if I look up a definition of narcissist or covert narcissist, I can see those behaviors in so many different people in my life. I can even see a couple behaviors in myself. Like, wait a minute, am I a narcissist? I think when we're hearing definitions, especially around these hotter topics like narcissism personality disorders, it is tricky. I can definitely see why so many people can get spun when they listen to different podcasts and definitions and books and professionals who talk about this. You and I were talking about this particular topic and how you were saying you could even pick out different behaviors that Luke would have that could fall under the covert narcissist category. And he doesn't have a personality disorder, and it doesn't diminish the behaviors and the impact of the behaviors. And so let's just talk about that for a minute, Alana. Like, I think going into this, one of the main points that I want listeners to know from me is whether or not they have a personality disorder, whatever that label is. What I want my betrayed partners to focus on is their impact, paying attention to their body in that impact. Because label or not, whatever it's called, how that is impacting you is what matters. And that's the information that we need to gather. And that's always where I start, especially where I don't see the partner or meet with the partner often. I can still know a heck of a lot more. In fact, I was talking to one of our coaches. I'd never met the partner, but I was like, here's what I'm picking up on in her body and mine. And he's like, spot on, because I'm paying attention to the real information, and that's the body. So I'm just going to throw the method out there. Right? That's really what I'm hoping y'all walk away with today from me is that the behaviors, whether it's labeled personality disorder, whatever, the behaviors and the impact on you is what matters. That's what needs to be fixed. Not you fix it, but the person.
Yeah. Yeah. That right there, Amie, you and I, we've continued to talk about this as we finish these different conversations. And you look at NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, and in the DSM, it's, I want to say 2 pages. And what actually qualifies under that is a very small percentage of the population. But as a culture, we have stretched way beyond that. And we've created, and I almost wish we had a different word now for it, because we've created like all these different kind of offshoots that aren't actually NPD, but are addressing really problematic patterns and behaviors that are emotional abuse.
Yeah.
And that's what I really want to emphasize here is I think where some people heard us taking that label away from just stamping the label on cheaters and stamping the label on as addicts felt very like threatening and scary, that we were somehow taking away accountability, or we were somehow giving them a free pass, or we were somehow not
Minimizing the impact of the behavior.
yeah, not seeing the seriousness of it, which is not the case at all, especially with Alexandra, where we're really looking at treatment for these individuals. Does look different when it's a personality disorder versus when it's not. But for you as a partner, what you need to be doing and how you need to be protecting yourself and being aware of the impact does not have to do with the label. And so all of the different therapists who are out there talking about the covert narcissist and the humble narcissist and the passive aggressive narcissist and all the different offshoots of that, the behaviors they're talking about are still abusive. They are still unacceptable. They are still impacting you and making you question your reality and questioning your sense of self and destroying your self-esteem and affecting your body. And I could keep going with all of the harmful ways it's impacting you. And so I think there is value to those messages.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so this really is a bigger conversation that we're trying to have here to look at the complexity of this. But for you as a partner, the most important thing and I'm repeating Amie because Amie, what you said is so important. The most important thing is what your body is telling you and what you're experiencing. Like that. I need you to sit with that. And I think when you have dealt with years of emotional abuse, whether the person is quote unquote an abuser, or they are abusing to protect themselves, or they are abusing to protect an addiction or acting out, I don't care where the abuse comes. If you've had, I mean, I do care, but if you've had all of this years and years of abuse, sometimes we get disassociated or disconnected from the experience our body is having.
Right.
And so much of your work is getting back in tune and back connected with your body so we can do this essential work.
Yeah. I think that's where I see it in my own experience and with others is that we do sometimes get caught up in trying to figure it out logistically, psychologically, putting a name to it, a label to it, in the attempt to try to make sense of what's happening internally.
Mhm,
And I think I tried to validate this in our episode with Gary that I wanted a language. When I heard more of a language and vocabulary and words and the labels and the whatever to describe my experience, it really did help. So I also want to validate why, as a betrayed partner, you might find yourself grabbing the book on narcissism or grabbing the book on personality disorders. Like, again, not wrong. We're not either oring any of this today. And so I can validate that in my own experience. Oh my gosh, when I heard the language, when I read the book, and oh, yes, it was so validating. Yes, this is what I'm experiencing. And finally, I'm not crazy and someone gets it and can put words to it. It really helped me tremendously.
mhm.
And to be able to even call it out and start to see it. I had an experience not too long ago where I was having a conversation with someone and I was like, Alana, I saw the abuse in real time. And it sounds weird that I was excited about it just because it really wasn't a fun conversation. But what I was excited about for me is my ability to be aware in real time because I have the language, because I know the signs and I know what to look for and I'm paying attention to my body, right? All the work paid off in that conversation where I didn't get sucked in and I didn't get derailed and I wasn't gaslit because I'm not going to let that happen, right? Because I'm calling it out, I'm seeing it. And so for that reason, I hope none of you are thinking we're saying, don't read the books and just let it go and don't worry about figuring it out or no, this really is helpful. I still, as a professional and in my own life, my healing, I have to make sure my body comes first, my experience and identifying that first, validating that first, getting to know what that is first. So much of trauma and abuse disconnects you from your body.
Mhm,
So I'm always going to encourage my clients and remind myself to come back to body first, to gather more of that information and language. So it's like if you're not on YouTube, you can't see my arms, like it's a collective. It's like all of it, not either or. And sometimes when we're listening to these episodes, I think we can be in that either or, right, wrong, give me the checklist kind of mind frame. So sometimes we do take things either out of context or more personal.
and with that reaction, going back to like our triggers are information for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
I like to think about what message am I taking from what I'm hearing? So, like, for example, where if somebody were to say, yeah, that behavior actually isn't narcissistic, but it is abusive. But your brain hears it's not narcissistic. And then the message that I might make from that is, well, you're saying that my pain isn't real, or
Mhm.
you're saying that what he did isn't that bad, or you're saying that I am wrong, that I don't actually know what it means to be narcissistic. And that now what? Now, what does that mean? I don't actually know what's reality again.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways that our brain just takes information and it makes messages. And especially about messages about ourselves, because that's just how we're hardwired.
Mhm.
And this is really a good tool to use for podcast, for working with your therapist, for going to groups, of noticing what is the message that my brain is making out of that.
Yeah.
Because in that message often is where that deeper meaning for you is where the work is to be done. So I'll give like a more personal example. If I were to hear a message that said something along the lines of the person who cheated, let's say, I'm trying to think of one in particular that really pissed me off, but my brain's not working that well. But if someone were to say, okay, cheaters often aren't aware or thinking about, okay, yeah, this is a good one. Often when someone's cheating, they're not thinking about their loved one, they're only thinking about themselves. Okay. That's a
Yes.
reality. And oh my gosh, there was a time that that was such a painful statement because the message I took from that is I am not enough for him and I really don't matter. And there are some deep core meanings and messages I got when I was younger that I have done a lot of work through. But before I did a lot of work through, and even still today can get tapped into,
Mhm.
is this I'm not enough.
Yeah.
And so hearing somebody say that taps into I'm not enough. And you're either going to get, for me, a deep sadness, a withdrawal, like a hand in the air and I'm done, screw you, or a really open my mouth and me getting angry and aggressive. All of those are protector parts that are showing up. And I can get really caught up on how dare you say that and the way you
Yeah.
said that and what that was said.
Mhm.
Oh, for me, what's really happening internally was why wasn't I enough for him?
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? And side note, nothing was wrong with me. And it wasn't that I wasn't enough for him. Nobody could have been enough for him when he was making those choices because he had his own stuff to work out, which I know you all know that, but I just have to say that just in case.
Right.
But this right here of owning what is my work to do. And I'm just going to have some compassion for myself and for each of you that these wounds before I was cheated on were not issues that I was thinking about dealing with. But once I had that type of injury, they were very real and very raw. Yeah. And everything came to the surface. And so there is a real valid true part that if I had not been cheated on, I would not have to do the work in this way. Like that is very true.
Mhm.
And I am, bleh, I'm not grateful. I will never say I was grateful that I was cheated on. Yeah, maybe I will. Probably not. I am not okay with being cheated on. I am grateful that I have done the work that I've done. And I'm grateful for the growth I've gotten because some of those really deep wounds of not being enough are not there anymore. And I am grateful for that work. And I will own that work that I have done and continue to do. If you're having a response of, I didn't choose this, I know you
Yep.
didn't choose this. You are not responsible for any of their choices, but you are responsible for your healing.
That's why we say at the end of every podcast, choose recovery, choose healing, and choose you. The choose you part, I'll tell you, I almost sometimes I have to re-record that a couple times because I get tearful when I say that, because that's the biggest part in all of this, because we've lost ourselves. I didn't know who I was before I got married. And so I want to validate what you're saying there. I know this is going to be hard for so many people to hear. I want to add my words to what you're saying there. My experience, what you're saying is I didn't know who I was. I never knew to choose me. I felt selfish. My idea of choosing me was so wrapped up in unhealthy roles and all the things. And so I agree. Being able to learn what choosing me and choosing healing, despite how other humans treat me, has been a gift because I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to handle being mistreated. And now I know how to handle being mistreated by not abandoning myself and by continuing to choose me. So we say that in those words. And I remember, Alana, when you and I first decided to start this podcast, we were coming up with these different words and catchphrases. And I remember where I was in a hotel room by myself thinking about this. And that phrase came to my mind: choose recovery, choose healing, and choose you. Doesn't matter. Scratch that. It does matter. The language and the labels and the diagnosis. But what matters more is you.
You matter. Your healing matters.
Your experience matters.
Mhm.
And it matters to us. And I hope you all know that too.
And your value does not diminish whether someone can see it or not, and whether someone respects it or not. You are whole and complete. So, on that note, Amie and I are giving you a virtual hug through the miles.
Mhm.
As you're doing this hard work, we're cheering you on. And I will give a quick plug if anyone wants to hang out with Amie or I. This year, Amie is doing her brain spotting intensive in Utah in April. And then we have a somatic intensive for women who have been working their recovery for about a year or longer, who are a little more grounded and who really want to get into their body and do the body work. You can come in January and do that. And then if you want to really dive deep into your brain spotting with Amie, come in January, come back in April, come see us. It'd be wonderful. We do intensives about once a month here, but I love the opportunity of feeling your energy and being around each of you. There's such cool, wonderful, amazing humans walk through these doors. It's an honor for Amie and I get to be with you. So,
Mhm.
as always, thank you for hanging out with Amie and I this week, and we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Hi, guys. This is Laura with Choose Recovery Services, and I wanted to just let you know about an intensive that we have coming up in Spanish Fork, Utah from January 22nd to the 25th. This is an intensive that Hallie Roderick and I and Alana Gordon will be running together, and it's the Revive and Thrive Intensive. Something that Peter Levine says is that trauma is physical, and because trauma is physical, we need some physical component to that healing for it to move through our bodies. And that's what this intensive is aimed at. We have workshops, we have experiences, we have lots of tools that we'll be sharing on how to move trauma through your body in a physical, somatic way. We hope you can join us. And for more information, there will be a link in the show notes, or you're welcome to visit chooserecoveryservices.com. Hope to see you there.
I want to speak to those who you feel like you're wearing a mask. Maybe that's coming up in your recovery, just more awareness of the mask that you wear. And you're really struggling to show your authentic self. Like if people saw me, they wouldn't be able to accept me. They wouldn't love me. So that vulnerability piece, either somebody's saying, hey, you're not vulnerable enough, or you're like, I'm struggling with vulnerability, and finding that genuine connection, specifically with people outside of your partner and your partner. If that resonates, I wanted to invite you to our Unmasked intensive in Spanish Fork, Utah. It's a 3-day intensive. It's hosted by Choose Recovery Services. This experience is designed to help men who are ready to step into self-discovery and transformation. So during the intensive, let you know what you're going to experience. You're going to connect with other men that are at similar places in your journey. You're going to explore the true meaning of what actually is integrity. This isn't just an honesty thing, it's an integrity thing. And remove the masks that you have on that maybe culture or society has placed on you. And you're going to gain a deeper understanding of how your family of origin impacts your thoughts and your actions today. And you're going to be able to start on the journey of healing some of those inner wounds from the past and how it's affecting your relationships today. So again, Spanish Fork, Utah. It's going to be January 15th through the 17th. Take some steps towards reclaiming that authentic self. And this is a huge investment in self, and we recognize that. So if you want to learn more about it, you can go to chooserecoveryservices.com, but we'll put in the show notes more information. If you have been considering this for a while, go ahead and make the jump. I'm be very excited to meet you and see you in person.